Hey team, and welcome back to another video in our Astrological Magical Elections video series. Today we are going to talk about those magical electional opportunities that we are going to have from between our Leo full moon on February 5th until our Pisces New Moon on February 20th. So a couple of things I want to point out. First is I'm really sorry for those of you who are going to be bothered by the different color of the bookshelf lights and the candles. Unfortunately, my electric candles here don't actually have a very good yellow color. That's the best that they can do, is this kind of like a weird orangish thing. So, whoops, we're just gonna have to deal with that. And then another thing is that I know several people have commented in the past about how they want the time information in the charts to last longer. So I'm going to do better about extending those times in this video. I say that mostly so that future Ryan, when he edits this, will remember to keep those longer rather than keeping them short like they have in the past. So we're going to give that a try and see how that goes. And if that seems to do fine, we'll do our best to incorporate that into future videos. Let's see what else. I have Blossom here with me, but she's not wanting to be filmed. I'll move her, but you probably still can't see her. She's that black blob back there. But anyway, when we're talking about our waning moon phases, which is what we have when we go from our full moon to our new moons, we're dealing very much within the spirit of the waning moon, which is about giving back, letting go of things. So we're definitely having to dial into that, especially when it comes to our Lunar Mansion talismans. But we don't have a whole lot going on this 2-week period. A lot of stuff ended up being hit by the Saturn and Mars squares and blah, 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 blah. So we don't have a whole lot going on, just a handful of elections, and they're all the same elections. So we're going to do this kind of an older school style where we're just going to cover each chart. I'm sorry, we're going to cover, each election from the different locations, talk about their differences, and kind of go from there, kind of as one big unit rather than having the video separated into the 3 locations like we typically do. And then we'll talk about some small differences or things like that when we get to those. But going ahead and diving into this, our first selectional opportunity is going to be for a 14th Lunar Mansion talisman. And the 14th Lunar Mansion is one of those that, again, it very much embodies the spirit of the waning moon. So the 14th Lunar Mansion is very much about breaking up, about separating, about severing, about letting go of things. And I've always really enjoyed the image of the 14th Lunar Mansion, which is of a dog chasing its tail. And I think that's just kind of like a really, on the one hand, kind of a silly, but on the other hand, a really kind of a powerful image of kind of what this Lunar Mansion embodies. It's about the more strategic usage of our time and our energy, and sort of coming to the realization that these things that we're trying to do that just aren't gelling, that aren't working out together, are sort of that metaphorically chasing a tail. Like, it's just a waste of energy, unnecessarily expending energy, taking our time and attention away from things that we maybe could fix. And so the 14th Lunar Mansion is good about helping us to realize that, helping us to stop and let go of the things that we shouldn't really be putting that much time and attention into, so that we can kind of come back later and put those into a much more constructive kind of form. So our 14th Lunar Mansion is very much about breaking up and moving beyond things. It's a little bit harsh in the way that it does it. My favorite of the more waning Lunar Mansions is the 12th. But the 14th is kind of like a much more harsher, a much kind of more difficult Lunar Mansion, in how it does, and how it kind of accomplishes that breakup, or that separating, or that letting go of things. So just kind of keep that in mind, if you're looking to kind of move beyond something, and kind of help process things. The 14th Lunar Mansion can be good. It's just not as like gentle in a lot of the ways that it, like the 12th Lunar Mansion would be, that kind of thing. And there may be an alternative mansion later on in the video that might end up being a better option for most of you anyway. So I'm going to talk about the 14th Lunar Mansion. We're going to offer it up as an option just because it is an option. But just keep in mind that I also think that one a little bit later is probably a little bit better for most people in most instances. So getting ahead and digging into our electional opportunities, our first one for the 14th Lunar Mansion for the North American continent is going to take place on February 8th at around 1619, so just a little bit after 4:15 p.m. And here we're going to have, where did she go? Oh, the moon here in the 14th Lunar Mansion in the 4th house. I'm sorry, the 3rd house. I can't, too many 4s there. And at this time, she's applying this trine to Mercury and Capricorn conjoined the descendant. The moon is the ruler of the first house here in Virgo. She's far enough away, 12 degrees away from the square of Mars. We don't have to worry about that involved. The ascendant is safe from that too, and she's averse to Saturn, and so too is the ascendant. So we've got a good safety net there. Having the moon apply to a malefic planet wouldn't be a terrible thing in a mansion like this one, which is focused on breaking apart and breaking down and separating and things like that. But I still wouldn't want to include a tightly separating square from Mars. I don't think that's super helpful for this. I would probably avoid a square to Mars even in an application, but that would have to be more of like a that would come down to context a little bit about what I felt was good, what I felt was useful for that specific individual. Mercury here is an interesting choice for this kind of a thing. Typically, we think of planets either in the good doing, the benefic planets, and then the bad doing, the malefic planets. And those are kind of our battle lines, I guess. Mercury kind of operates this middle ground between those two things. But the big takeaway is that even historically, Mercury is seen as a little bit more of a disruptive influence because of Mercury's kind of inability to pick a side, right? So there's this little bit of this traitor element, I guess, in Mercury. But really what it is this sort of focus on an instability. Mercury is a thing that changes so much that it's hard to depend on it. And so the environments that Mercury tends to do well in or to signify itself are those that are themselves a little bit disorganized and subject to change, which can make them difficult to count on or rely on. So I say all that to say that while a lot of the times, benefic planets tend to make things easier, and malefic planets tend to make things a little bit harder in these kind of separating, breaking apart, more waning moon contexts, that choice of what you want changes depending on what you're comfortable with. Sometimes you want things just to be over and done with. Malefic planets are great about it. Sometimes you want things to not be so harsh, or end so harshly, and that's where benefic planets come in. Mercury operates that middle ground, where it could kind of go either way. But inherently, Mercury is unstable. So we can go to Mercury to almost kind of undermine things without having to make a conscious choice to do it. So Mercury in this situation more represents something doesn't work out because of this outside thing, but that's fine because you didn't want it to work out anyway, and we have to cancel. It's sort of like when you make plans with a friend to go out and do something one night after work, and you'll go, but you don't super want to go, and then you're really happy when they're like, oh, I can't do it tonight, we're gonna have to cancel. And that's great because then you get to put your sweatpants back on. That's Mercury. Mercury is kind of like that outside force that interrupts something without you having to consciously cancel on your friend. If something happened and they have to do it, which is so much easier than you having to do it. For those of you who have conflict avoidance styles, that's the way to go there. The Western European version is similar. Of course, they're all going to be similar to the North American version. The difference now is that whereas in the North American version, the moon was in the third house, in the Western Europe and North African version, we're going to be able to get the moon on the ascendant, which is where she performs better in magical elections on the ascendant or on the midheaven than she does in the third. So this is kind of a little bit of an upgrade. We're able to maintain that trine with Mercury like we had in the other one, but now our context has changed a little bit in that now Mercury rules the first house. So Mercury in this instance also represents kind of the person who the talisman is going to be for. So we can't really count on Mercury. Mercury is going to be like you canceling the thing. So to kind of continue the metaphor from the last chart, Mercury is going to be like you being unable, you being the destabilizing factor. So a little bit of a different kind of a context there, sort of giving yourself the, I'm going to use the word courage. I'm not sure that's a great word, and it may not be a great word depending on the context that you're thinking about using this in, to be like, no, I'm done here, and being able to move on. So that's a little bit more for the more conflict-oriented people to utilize here, whereas the other one was a little bit more outside force. And I liked that in the North American version, the Mercury actually was conjoined the descendant, so it was a little bit more like other person, other party kind of centered on how things work. But unfortunately, you can't get away from that here with the Virgo ascendant representing the person that it's for, which would probably be you in this case. For those of you who might be a little concerned about the Mars, the separating Mars square here from the ascendant and the moon, I wouldn't be 10 degrees is plenty far enough away to not have to worry about it, but you can actually push this back forward in time So like this chart here is set for February 8th at just before 11 p.m. or sorry, no, 9 p.m. at 20:55 to get this like 22 degrees Virgo. But if you wanted to create more space between Mars and the ascendant, you can just kind of keep pushing that to go later and later into Virgo. That's totally fine. But you would probably want to stop around 29-ish degrees because you don't want to go into Libra because Venus will rule the first house. And she's much more caught. Oops, that's great. She's much more caught in the sights of this Mars square than the moon or the ascendant have to worry about in this instance. So the Australian version of this chart has to kind of straddle a little bit of a line and gets to be also different from the previous two, which is fun. The Australian version of the 14th Lunar Mansion talisman is on February 9th at 2:33 in the morning, so sometime around 2:30 if you want to wake up for that. And here we are juggling one thing, I think. We have the moon in the 10th house. She's not as conjoined the midheaven as I tend to like her. I usually want her like right here, but we weren't able to do that. And she's still applying that trine to Mercury, so we're still bringing in a lot of that like destabilizing energy. This time it's a little bit less focused on the individual. It's more it's a little bit less focused on the individual in the way the Western Europe and North African version was, and it's a little bit more like externalized like the North American version was, just because Mercury isn't taking up ownership of the first house like it was in the Western Europe and North African chart. Let's see. Right. Okay. So what we're straddling here is this Sagittarius, this kind of later Sagittarius rising. Oh, I'm not sitting up in my chair. Hold on. I gotta pick my chair up so I can take up more of that thing. There we go. So we're trying to avoid, of course, the Mars opposition, which is like at 12 degrees. So that takes out like 17, like from down to like 17 degrees of Sagittarius is where I would call, the end of the Mars opposition, emphasis or not influence. That's the word. So about there. So we have about 9 degrees away, which is good. But what we want to maintain this later Sagittarius ascendant, and we're kind of trying to make the moon as angular as we can, which is a good thing, while also keeping Capricorn from rising up to the ascendant. Because while Sagittarius is on the ascendant, we're talking Jupiter here in Aries, and Jupiter in Aries is doing good. It's not badly aspected by the Sun or Saturn or Mars, or anything like that. But if we go into Capricorn, then we'll switch to Saturn as the ruler of the first house. And while Saturn in Aquarius is good, we're starting to get into like the combustion territory with the sun, and I don't want that. So we avoid combustion from the ruler of the first house as much as possible. So maintain that late Sagittarius ascendant for Australia if this is something that you're interested in doing. So our second electional opportunity is going to be for the 23rd Lunar Mansion. And this is the one where I was saying, like, I think it's probably the better option for most people who were looking or thinking about taking up the 14th Lunar Mansion. Oh, I forgot to turn on my star. Hold on. Okay, great. Star's on. We're back. So the 23rd Lunar Mansion is the one that I think would be better for most people that were looking into the 14th Lunar Mansion, or were thinking that they could utilize that 14th Lunar Mansion's like separating and severing kind of an energy. The 23rd Lunar Mansion does something very similar, and it's a little bit neater in how it does it. And the 23rd Lunar Mansion is one that is, again, more waning oriented because it's about like sacrifice and giving up something. But we find its uses here a bit more positive than the 14th, where there's this emphasis on like being able, like on healing and things like that, on improving things, or like breaking bad habits. The idea is that the 23rd Lunar Mansion, it's about swallowing things. It's about eating things. So what you want to do is you want to give the 23rd Lunar Mansion things to eat that you don't want anymore. And those can be, obviously we're talking metaphors here, like, what's something that you could throw into the pit what's something that you deal with now that you can just throw into the pit and, hope to be done with it. That's really more the emphasis with the 23rd Lunar Mansion, whether that's like, sacrificing your illness, sacrificing pain, sacrificing bad habits, that kind of a thing. And that's really where the 23rd Lunar Mansion is. And that's why I tend to recommend it a little bit more than like the 14th, because there is this sense that it's easier, I think, to work with in a lot of ways. So that's the 23rd Lunar Mansion. Definitely recommend it a lot. After having a somewhat more recent change in tune about it, I used to be much more kind of wary of this mansion than I am now. But here, And this is where it's going to get kind of weird because this is also kind of happening somewhat simultaneously with what's probably our one actually useful Venus in Pisces election. So you're probably gonna have to make a choice here about about which one you want to do. So we're gonna kind of take it step by step or location by location because it is different. But we're gonna kind of talk a little bit about the 23rd Lunar Mansion election and the Venus in Pisces planetary election too. So remember, when we're talking planetary elections, planetary talismanic elections, I do not recommend you getting a Venus in Pisces talisman or making one yourself if your own natal Venus is in trouble in some way. If Venus is a planet in your natal chart that you consistently run into trouble with because she either rules bad houses or is placed in a sign she doesn't do well in, or is afflicted by a malefic planet, then you don't want to get a Venus in Pisces talisman because it'll just make that worse. It'll just kind of it'll just exacerbate the situation. You'll want to do like preparatory work before that, and unfortunately, that's probably not something you're going to be able to get in under the bell, like squeeze it out at the last second, like you would have maybe some other things. But we're going to go ahead and talk about this one here. So for the 23rd Lunar Mansion, for the North American continent, we're going to do February 17th at 8:26 a.m. And here you're going to have the moon on the cusp of the 11th house. In the 23rd mansion, and applying the sextile to Venus in Pisces on the ascendant here. The ruler of the ascendant is Jupiter in Aries, and you have this like nice Venus-Jupiter conjunction. Well, not exactly a conjunction, I guess, but this nice Venus-Jupiter cohabitation-ish in the first house, which is really great. This is a really nice, I would almost exclusively recommend this for like a healing kind of a talisman, just because the really nice support from the benefic planets in the first house of the body. So really good for work for that. And like symptom management, pain management, things like that. Really, really super great stuff to work with on that. Now for the North American version, this is also the Venus in Pisces talisman. So this the same time, 8:26, and it's going to be one of those you're going to have to decide which one you want. And so you have, of course, Venus in Pisces, her sign of exaltation, on the ascendant. The moon is immediately applying that sextile from Capricorn here. And it's Venus's day. This takes place, the February 17th is a Friday. So it takes place during Venus's day, and you want either the day or the hours that checks out. So all in all, this can also be a really good opportunity, and our one opportunity that we're going to have for a Venus in Pisces talisman. So I recommend you taking advantage of it. If a Venus talisman is something that you can effectively utilize, and you've been looking out for one and have some materials that you can kind of put together for it, I think this is a good option. Now, the 23rd Lunar Mansion talisman opportunity for Western Europe and North Africa takes place on February 17th at 5:57-ish, so just before 6 a.m. And here we're going to have, of course, the moon in the 23rd mansion, angular on the ascendant, and we're still got this sextile to Venus in Pisces. It's a little far. It's 12 degrees, which is kind of far here. But it's the best we've got. It's the best we've got to work with. Is that true though? I mean, I guess it would be, because even if I moved it up there, it wouldn't be super close. I was going to say, I wonder if I can get like the moon in the 11th house, see what sign that gets me on the ascendant, and see if I can't work with that. But, it's not going to get me any closer to, I can't use this chart. Capricorn rising, Saturn, ruler of the first house, can bust the sun. So we are going to try to move this a bit and see what we can do with it. Yeah. So we can do like a Pisces rising. Cool. Okay, so we can do more of a Pisces rising here. And okay, cool. I wonder why I don't know. I just guess I blinked out and wasn't paying attention. So we can do a situation with the Western Europe and North African chart where it looks basically very similar to the North American chart. The moon here conjoined the 11th house cusp in the 23rd mansion, applying that sextile to Venus. The aspect between the moon and Venus didn't really close up any like I thought it would. Like we've gone 10 degrees from 12 degrees, so like we got 2 more. But that doesn't really tighten it much more, okay, which is what I thought would happen. But we're still able to maintain that. Another good example of the Venus-Jupiter conjunction in the first house, a nice benefic conjunction or cohabitation here to really kind of empower and protect the body, the individual that the talisman is for, that kind of a thing. And this would also be the 8:55 time, would also be that opportunity for the Venus in Pisces talisman if you wanted to approach it that way instead. Again, Venus in Pisces, her sign of exaltation on the ascendant. The moon is applying that aspect. It's far away. We don't super like that, but it's the best that we've got. So we're going to have to deal with it or take it or leave it is kind of the situation that we're in. And Venus, again, the 17th is a Friday, so it's Venus's day, which is important. And then Jupiter as the ruler of the first house is, I didn't want that. Jupiter as the ruler of the first house is, situated well, and maybe not well. I mean, there's, nocturnal triplicity and things like that. But, it's not aspected poorly by Saturn, Mars, or the Sun. So that's kind of where we're aiming for here. So this can be another good opportunity for that Venus in Pisces talisman, if you are so inclined. So the Australian version of the 23rd Lunar Mansion chart upset me because they're not able to get the timing in the same way that North America, North Africa, and Western Europe were. So that sucks. And it's always the case because of how the times are different, to where either Australia gets it or Western Europe, North Africa gets it, and North America gets it. So that's unfortunate. But we are able to utilize that 23rd Lunar Mansion talisman now at the 18th of February at 9:14 in the morning. The moon here is, let's see. So I was just really focused. Again, the moon is here on the 11th house cusp. With this late degree of Pisces rising. I was just really focused on taking advantage of the of Venus and Jupiter being placed in the first house. That was my main focus here. I suppose you could do one with the moon more. Oh, no, you can't, because the moon will be out of the mansion then. The moon is like barely hanging on to the 23rd Lunar Mansion right now. Right now she's at 25 degrees Capricorn in 23 minutes. And the 23rd mansion ends at 25 Capricorn in 42 minutes. So I can't move this chart forward anymore. Then that's the main reason why, this notwithstanding, the main reason why the moon is placed here, because I could do the moon on the ascendant and get the Capricorn rising, but then that kind of gets me to the trouble that I had with the North African and Western Europe chart where Saturn rules the ascendant and is combust, and that's not going to work. We could bring it back to the third house, I guess, and have Mars as a ruler of the ascendant. But then our sextile here gets further, and that's not super fun. So the best practice is just that 9 in the morning, that 9:11 in the morning. So let's see, moon here in the 23rd mansion, hanging on to it by a thread, applying the sextile to Venus here, very close, only 2 degrees separating, which is nice. Venus in the first house, this nice conjunction here. Jupiter is the ruler of the first house, unafflicted by Mars, Saturn, or the Sun. It all checks out. Unfortunately, we're not really able to use this as a Venus in Pisces talisman because it's Saturn's day and Mars's hour at this time, because it takes place on February 18th for Australia. So that's no fun. But we can utilize a Venus. But I'm not saying that you can't have a Venus in Pisces talisman. It's just that it has to look weird to do it. And sometimes that's the best we can do, is something weird. So taking a look at this one, the Venus in Pisces talisman would then come a day earlier, around February 17th at around that same time, like 9:11, 9:15-ish. And here we're focusing again, excuse me, on Venus in the sign of Pisces, her sign of exaltation, on the ascendant, and the moon is applying this sextile to Pisces still. Like it's just now 15 degrees away, which is pretty far. So that's a bit uncomfortable, but again, this is going to be our only real option for a Venus in Pisces talisman while Venus is in Pisces, mostly because the square of Mars cuts out such a huge swath of that sign to where the last 5 degrees or the first 5 degrees are the only thing we're really going to be able to take advantage of. So we're lucky that we even kind of get this, because I'm sure that there are people who are looking at this and thinking that the square of Mars to Venus in Pisces is still too close for them, and that's totally fine if that's how you feel. This is 11 degrees apart, so I think it's fine. I think after we get past 9-ish degrees, we're doing good. But if you don't want to deal with that, I totally hear you, and you understand where I'm coming from when I'm like, it's either this or nothing, because that's all we've got. But that's the option there. Again, that Friday, February 17th, and that's the best that we're gonna get. Unfortunately, Venus in Pisces. I'm not sure that Venus in Taurus looks much better. I haven't super scrutinized it, but I know just knowing that the node is there for a large part of it is going to really hurt. So good times ahead for Venus in her home. But all right, thank you guys so much for watching. I know we didn't have a whole lot of electional opportunities to talk about today, but you know, that's just the way it goes sometimes. At least we're able to kind of utilize that 14th, that 23rd, and that Venus in Pisces talisman. There's a lot that you can really do with the 23rd Lunar Mansion, so hopefully those of you who have a situation where you feel like the 23rd can help will be able to get a hold of that and use that to good effect. And then, of course, those of us who have some ideas for Venus and Pisces and also have set up in our natal chart where Venus talismans can work for us without causing havoc, have a good option there to pick up. I just wanted to bring Blossom up to the camera to say hello, because she's a little bit more of a shy kitty cat sometimes and has been hiding out in her bed this whole time. She's actually very warm. I'm sure she's extremely happy about me having picked her up for something she doesn't quite understand. I'm sure she really likes that. Yeah. Oh, here, I'll put you back in bed. I'll at least, put you back where I found you. There you go. There you go. But thank you guys so much for being here. A special shout out. Thank you to all my patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in supporting the channel and helping me put food on Blossom's table, as well as all her cat siblings, consider joining up with the Patreon. There's a number of good bonuses there. A 6-hour-long introduction to Astrological Magical mini course, community office hours in Discord, free talismanic gifts when appropriate, as well as other fun bonuses. So make sure to check that out if any of that sounds fun to you, and I will see you guys all again on our Pisces New Moon.